Hi, third grade friends. It's Mrs. Moore back again. Today, I get to teach you our first area and perimeter lesson. However, for today, our focus will only be on area. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to determine the area of any rectangle. Boys and girls, as always, please make sure that right next to you, you have a pencil, a piece of paper or a spiral notebook, and your math packet if you have one. This will allow you to participate in our lesson with me. So boys and girls, I happen to know that during our multiplication and division units, you studied quite a bit about area word problems. Would you please pause the video and try to remember, well, what is area and how do we determine the area of a rectangle? What were you able to remember, third graders? Were you able to remember that the area of an object is just the total amount of space covered by that object or shape? Were you also able to remember from our word problem unit that we determine the area of any rectangle by multiplying the length times the width of that rectangle? So you guys know that area word problems just represent the total amount of space covering a shape, and we measure area in square units. When we did our word problem unit, we talked a lot about how relevant area word problems are to your daily lives. You can find the area of any rectangular object in your home by simply measuring the side lengths and multiplying the longer side length times the shorter side length. When we were in class together, we brainstormed all of the different rectangular objects around our house, and we talked about how we would find the area of these objects. We talked about how you could find the area of a rectangular carpet in your house by measuring the length and the width of that carpet and multiplying them together. That tells you the total amount of space covered in square units. You could also use area to determine the amount of soil you need to cover your garden bed if it's a rectangle. Or if you needed to get a new tablecloth for your rectangular table, you would need to determine the area of that table by measuring the length and width and multiplying those together so you can figure out how much space needs to be covered. Boys and girls, pause the video and look around the room you're in and see if you can find any rectangular objects that you could easily find the area of by multiplying their length times their width. What did you come up with? Boys and girls, in the room that I'm in currently in my office, I know that I would be able to find the area of many rectangular objects, such as the picture frames I see. They're rectangles, so I can multiply their lengths and widths. I also have a poster in front of me. I could find the area of that poster by multiplying the long side times the shorter side. You could find the area of a towel, of your bedspread or blanket if it's a rectangle, of a desk, of a carpet. There are so many different rectangles in our homes that we could find the areas of. Please remember from our multiplication and division unit that area is always measured in square units, and your answer must always include the correct square units. We studied a lot about key words that help us identify area word problems. Let's very quickly review these key words so that your mind is really fresh on all of our area content that we've learned about so far. We know that area problems represent the total area of rectangular objects by multiplying length times width. For example, Corbin got a new book that's 12 inches long and 10 inches wide. What is the total area of his book? Pause the video and please write down any keywords that told you right away that that was an area problem. What did you write down? So I know that it said 12 inches long. The word long tells me the length of his new book. It also says that it was 10 inches wide. Well, it's telling me that the unit is inches, and it's also telling me the width. So it's 12 inches long and 10 inches wide. So long and wide are the key words that tell me it has to do with measuring the amount of space covered by a rectangle. There's one very obvious keyword. Right, it says right here, boys and girls, what is the total area of his book? Well, I know it's asking for the total area. So I know right away that's referring to the amount of space covered by his book. How much space does his book take up? Let's look to see which keywords you came up with. So long, wide. Anytime a unit is provided, like square feet, inches, yards, and centimeters, you know right away, oh, it's talking about area. And area, and of course square, because we measure area in square units. Third graders, I'd like to review a little bit more. So you know area is the total amount of space covered by a shape. And we know it's the number of square units that fit inside a shape. You know one way to find area is just by multiplying the length and the width. So if I wanted to find the area of this rectangle, I know that it has 4 side lengths. I know, though, to find the area, I only need to multiply the longer side length, the length, times the width. Well, I would multiply 5 square feet times 3 square feet. Friends, what is the area of this rectangle? What is 5 times 3? Precisely. It is 15 square feet. Well, now look at this rectangle. For this rectangle, I know I can find the area by just very carefully counting the square units. So let's count the square units to determine the area. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 square units per row. And there are 3 rows. So I know I could multiply 6 times 3, which I know right away would be 18 square units. Pause the video and count the square units just to verify that our answer is correct. Fantastic, third graders. You're right. The area of this rectangle is 18 square units. If the square units are visible on a rectangle, you can simply find the area by carefully counting them. If they're not visible and side lengths are provided, you simply multiply the length times the width, and that tells you the total amount of space covered. Fantastic listening. We just finished a geometry unit, and the information we learned during this unit is going to help us determine the area of rectangles today. So boys and girls, we know that there are some attributes that rectangles and squares have that can help us determine missing side lengths. We know that rectangles and squares are both parallelograms. And we know that a characteristic of all parallelograms is that their opposite parallel sides are equal in length. So for this rectangle, if this side is 7 meters, its opposite parallel side is also 7 meters. If this side length is 2 meters, what would its opposite parallel side also be? Incredible, it would also be 2 meters. A square is even more fun because since a square has 4 equal side lengths, if you know just one of the side lengths, you automatically are able to determine the remaining side lengths because they're the same. Because an attribute of squares is that it has 4 equal side lengths. Fantastic, my wonderful friends. So if this side length is 6 millimeters, then the remaining side lengths are also what? Yes, 6 millimeters. Fantastic job. So let's just practice determining the areas of rectangles together. So I know to determine the area of a rectangle, I multiply the length and the width of that rectangle. I know that this side length is also 6 feet because it's the same as its opposite parallel side, and this side length is 3 feet. But to determine the area, I only need to multiply the length times the width. Friends, would you draw this rectangle on your scratch paper? Would you pause the video? And would you determine the area of this rectangle by multiplying 6 feet times 3 feet? Excellent work. What is the area of this rectangle, third grade friends? 18 square feet. Remember, my answer must always include the correct number of square feet. I have to put the unit so that my audience knows what I am measuring. Boys and girls, check your equation. Did you label it 6 feet, which is the length, times 3 feet, which is the width, tells us the total area? If you wrote square feet as part of your answer, circle it because that is critical. You always need to include your square units. Fantastic. Let's do a couple more together. Third graders, pause the video and determine the amount of space covered by this rectangle. Remember, area is always measured in square units. So please label your equation and include the correct number of square units. So you knew right away that you had to multiply the length, which is the longer side, times the width. So you multiplied 7 inches times 5 inches. Well, what is 7 inches times 5 inches? What is the total area in square inches? 35 square inches, yes. So you would have just multiplied 7 inches times 5 inches, and you know area is always measured in square units. Awesome. So for this particular square unit, I know it would be a square, and every side would be equal to 1 inch. My goodness. Boys and girls, for this one, you'll notice that the side lengths are missing. You will have to determine the side lengths by carefully counting the number of square units in each row. Would you please determine the length and the width of this rectangle, and then also please determine the area of this rectangle? Wonderful! Were you able to determine that the length was 8 square units? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the width was 3 square units. You could have found the area of this rectangle 2 ways. First, you could have multiplied the length times the width. So you could have remembered, oh, I know 8 times 3 is 24. You can always check your answer by carefully counting the square units. The area of this rectangle is 24 square units. There are 8 square units per row times 3 rows, so that equals 28 total square units. Mrs. Moore threw in a very tricky problem, but I think you can use what you know about geometry to be able to solve it. What type of shape, what type of quadrilateral is on my screen? Say it out loud. It's a square. Boys and girls, you'll notice that only the length was provided. I know that the length is 7 inches. I don't know the width yet. But boys and girls, how will you be able to figure out what the width is based on what you know about squares? Would you please pause the video, draw this square, and would you please correctly label each side length? Oh my goodness, I'm so proud of you. You knew right away that the width would have to be 7 because one of the attributes of a square is that all of the side lengths are what? Equal. And so I know that every single side length would also be 7. For this particular quadrilateral, this square, the length and the width are the exact same. So all I have to do is multiply 7 times 7. The length is 7 and the width is 7. And I know 7 times 7 equals 49. And so the total area of this square is 49 square inches. You guys are fantastic listeners. Okay, I have another square, and I want to see if you're able to find the area of this square completely independently. Pause the video, draw the square, label the side lengths, and determine the area. Please write the area in the middle of the square, just like it's written on my page. Pause the video and determine the area of this square. Incredible effort. You knew right away that if the length is 4 centimeters, all of the side lengths would be 4 centimeters. Why? Yes, because an attribute of any square is that all of the side lengths are equal. So I know the width would be 4 centimeters, and I know that all of the remaining side lengths would also be 4 centimeters. But I only need to know the length times the width. What was the area of this square? Say it out loud, and please remember to include your units. Precisely. The area of this square was 18 square centimeters because 4 times 4 equals 16 square centimeters. Yes, the length was 4 centimeters. The width was also 4 centimeters because it's a square. So the total area was 16 square centimeters. Awesome, Smarties. This is your assignment for the day. The good news is it's almost exactly what we've been doing together. You get to do a couple on your own. Please very carefully watch the first area and perimeter instructional video, and after you watch the video, please use scratch paper or your packet if you have one to determine the area of these shapes. Please then explain to me how you determined the area and what the area was. So this rectangle had all of the side lengths listed, but I only needed to know the length times the width. So I very carefully multiplied 4 inches times 3 inches, and I know the total amount of space covered is 12 square inches. So in this box, I put how I determine the area. Well, for this one, I just multiplied the length and the width, and I labeled my equation and solved. In this box, you just put the area. The total area is 12 square inches. There will also be some rectangles that aren't labeled, but actually have the square units inside them. So for these ones, you can determine the length and the width, or you can just carefully count all of the square units, because we know the area is the total number of square units that fit on a rectangle. So for this one, it says, how did I determine the area? I just said I carefully counted the total number of square units to determine the total area. And I found out that there were 25 square units on this rectangle. So the amount of space covered by the rectangle was 25 square units. Thank you for your wonderful listening. Please carefully complete your assignment and turn it in to your teacher. I know we can't wait to see your incredible work.